Hey guys, this week for my article on puremtgo.com, I've put together a great casual deck. I don't really have a name for it yet. You will see it when the article goes up because I don't know, I'm not creative like that, what can I say? But this deck is basically built around these cards right here, Vent Sentinel. This is a great creature. I tried to build several decks with it in other formats, classic, these more extended formats, and it's been great. And I wanted to see if this could be done in Pauper as well. I've seen a couple other people attempt it, and this is finally, it took me a while, and I've really been hammering on this deck to get it to work out the way I want it, but this is definitely the final version, only maybe a change or two that I would make. So this is what it was. Kind of the difficulty here was the fact that it is 3 colors. Originally I had wanted it to be a red and X deck, red is one color and then a second color and no more. But what I found when looking through the creatures with Defender is that red really didn't have a lot to offer. There were Defender creatures, but they were kind of boring. There was nothing really great about them. So what I really found was that green and white provided the best options for this as well. So what I did here, as you can see, is I kept the red cards to the minimum, just keeping it to my win conditions, and used the green and white to basically round out the rest of the deck, and put a little bit of a focus on color fixing and mana acceleration as well. So let's start off, and we'll take a look here at this corner over here. This is going to be our wind conditions. Now, obviously, the 4 Vent Sentinels are going to be the main win condition for this deck, and the idea is that you want to get as many creatures as possible with Defender onto the field, and you use the ability from Vent Sentinel to do damage to your opponent equal to the number of Defender creatures that you have. So you're going to want to usually do this at the end of your opponent's turn, just gives you, time to react or whatever. It's just a good habit to get into. So that's going to be the basis of the deck, but any deck running black or kill spells or anything like that is going to have the ability to get rid of these, so you need an alternate win condition. A lot of times people make this mistake when building decks, and they focus too much on that one win condition, and if it gets removed, their deck can't do anything. So while this is the main focus, I really also wanted some other answer. The first thing I added is 2 copies of Karavek's Torch. With this many Defender cards, you will definitely get to a mid to late game a lot of times, and so you will end up with a large mana base. There's also a lot of stuff like you see here. I'm using the Tinderwall and especially Overgrown Battlement that allow you to put in a large amount of mana. So being able to have these X burn spells available to you is great. It makes for a good finisher. Now, I will say I have played this deck a lot now, and even though I do have Karavek's Torch here, I really would recommend, if you have it, using Rolling Thunder instead. The downside to that is the fact that Rolling Thunder does require an additional red mana to cast it. It is 2 red plus X, whereas Karavek's Torch is 1 red plus X. But the difference is that, while Karavek's Torch and this ability that, anything spell that targets it is going to take 2 more to cast, while that is a great thing for a more competitive environment and casual, you'll find that you would want Rolling Thunder more because of the fact that you can split the damage off it. You will face a lot more creature-heavy decks, and splitting that damage is going to be more beneficial to you. The next thing I threw in is Thallid Shaledweller. Now this is a thing, every turn during your upkeep it gets a Spore counter, and then you can remove 3 of those counters to put a 1/1 Saproling into play. This is a very slow win condition attacking through with Saprolings, but they give you a lot of opportunity to continue to stall the game, and basically, that's what Is It Post does in the competitive environment, is you stall the game until you get something that can work. So this is kind of the win conditions. Now, I want to jump up to, real quick, the Evolution Charm. Now, I said that I wanted to do a bit of mana fixing, and this is hands down your best option available. Evolution Charm is the best thing because not only does it fetch lands, but you have this option here in the Choose One ability to return a creature from your graveyard to hand. That reanimation ability is going to be fantastic. What that does is basically give you 7 copies of Vent Sentinel. You enter this situation, like I said, if your opponent is playing black and he does kill off Vent Sentinels, then you have to sit around and wait till you find another one or another answer. Evolution Charm is kind of working as a win condition because it will allow us to get those back. But something to keep in mind is that you will find yourself in situations, and if you check out the 3rd example game, there you can see I made this mistake myself. It's best to use that, if you're going to use it in reanimation sense, it's use that at the end of your opponent's turn, and then it stops him from having any kind of sorcery speed play in response. So while we're up here, let's look at some of the other options. I am using 4 copies of Abundant Growth. Now, this is in for a little bit of color fixing, but honestly, you're not going to have a lot of troubles with that. The more important thing on this is the ability to draw a card. That is also why I'm running 3 copies of Explore. These cards are, great for land, ramp, and mana fixing, but at the same time, they are that cantrip. They do allow you to draw the card, and that's very, very important. I'm definitely a person who relies a lot on card draw, and I'm usually playing blue to do it, and you don't have a lot of options. Now, I had tried stuff out like Faithless Looting in this deck, and never drew into it. I tried, oh god, I'm not going to remember the name of it. The new red spell that allows you to discard your hand, draw 2 cards, and while that's great, if that's the only card in your hand, you can discard nothing and draw 2 cards. That's fantastic, but what I found that kept happening is that I ended up drawing multiples, and if I have 2 of those in my hand, then I am actually discarding a card and losing an opportunity to draw spells, and it doesn't work out. So, looks great on paper, not so great in this situation. So these are here, like I said, you can get ramp, but at the same time, the card draw is more important. Explore gives you the opportunity actually to, let's enlarge this here, gives you the opportunity to get Ven Sentinel into play on turn 3. Now, this is fantastic. That's the fastest you're going to be able to get it into play. But, getting that Sentinel on turn 3 or 4 is absolutely clutch, and it's where you want to be with this deck. Now, these 2 Captured Storm, these used to be the Faithless Looting. I'm sorry, Captured Sunlight. I'm still not entirely sold on these, but I found in some of my earlier test games that I was losing a lot to burn spells. In an early game, if they got a couple quick creatures in, and if they could do some burn damage to me, I was losing life. Now, I am running Pride Guardian, which gains 3 life whenever it blocks, but the key there is the fact that it actually has to block. So if it's not blocking creatures, you're not gaining life. So that's why I decided if I bring in Captured Sunlight, I can gain life, and it kind of works in that card acceleration side as well. I said the Abundant Growth and the Explorer are just there for a card ramp, and this is the same thing. The Cascade ability from Captured Sunlight would allow us to put something into play. Obviously, it will not be a Ven Sentinel, and you definitely don't want to hit Karavek's Torch with it, but these are the risks you take. This is, odds are you're going to hit one of your other wall creatures. You'll hit one of these here. It's going to work out pretty well. You can definitely, that's one of the opportunities to change a card. If you have discovered something else, feel free to add it to the comments here. Feel free to let me know, but, feel free to try anything else in that spot. I personally found that I was occasionally running into issues with life gain, and if I had just, even 4 more life, 2 more life, I would have been able to hold out for 1 more turn and finally win the game. Now, another thing with the color fixing, is I am running 6 copies of these fetch lands, a full set of Evolving Wilds, and 2 Terramorphics. I'm only running 23 lands, so you would think in most cases this would really slow you down, but I actually found this is more than enough. It helps you find the colors you need. You have other mana options through Overgrown Battlement. You have Tinderwall to get extra mana. You have all this stuff here to help find lands and build your mana base. So it really actually worked out really well. And I would not go over 6, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't go under 6. There are a couple of slow starts that you may get where you have those in the early game. But, that's something you just have to be aware of. You've got to be making some smart plays. Either the first or the second game, you'll see an example of this, so definitely check out those example games to understand better. So now let's go to take a look real quick at my choices for Defender creatures. Now, oddly enough, I kind of put together a toolbox of Defender creatures. There was a lot of stuff that was out there that we could use, and I wanted to get the most extra abilities as possible. Now, Stalwart Shieldbearers is a great card for defenders. There was kind of this theme during the Zendikar block that came out, which was based around defender creatures and really basically inspires this deck. And this is one that gives other creatures with defender +0/+2. So having these on the field gives my other walls a bigger defense. They do state that it is other creatures, so keep in mind that the shield bearer will not be more than 0/3 unless you get the second shield bearer out, and then it can pump each other. So that was great. I figured what better way to kind of beef up some of these smaller walls with the 0/3s. and really kind of put the Vent Sentinel. It puts it out of range from Flame Slash and stuff like that. So that was definitely a great one. Next up was Tinderwall. This, along with Overgrown Battlement, are things that I added for extra mana ramp. Like I said, I am running all of these Evolving Wilds. I am running all these things. I wanted as much extra mana as possible, and especially if you reach a point in time where you can feed it into a Caravex Torch or a Rolling Thunder for the win. At the same time, I didn't want to go overboard. There's other great stuff like Wall of Roots and stuff like that that gives you... sorry, another one just passed my mind. His name I can't remember. But there are other walls out there in green that will allow you to produce extra mana. These two I figured were the best ones because we are running very low on mountains, and this red mana could help power up these and find the mana we need for those. And at the same time, Overgrown Battlement is definitely the strongest. Again, Zendikar block, working with that Defender mechanic, is the strongest of the mana generating walls. It adds 1 green mana to your mana pool for each creature with Defender that you have, so definitely had to get those, but again, didn't go overboard. I kept these down to a minimum, and even 6 may be too many. Maybe the Tinder walls could be cut down more or removed and switched for something else altogether. Play it yourself and make your own opinions. Next up on the block, I put in 2 walls of Tanglecord. There are a lot of flyers, especially if you come against blue decks, Muldrifters, Delvers. These are things that you need to be able to block, Stitch Drake, stuff like that, and the Wall of Tanglecord is great. It's been an option for sideboards and competitive decks. It works really well. You just need the 1 green mana available to give it that reach ability. Again, didn't want to go overboard. It's nice that it comes in 2. You often find this situation. I like to, and you'll see I say this many times, but I like to keep these Vent Sentinels. If I get one into play on turn 4, on turn 5, I like to keep 2 mana available at all times to use Vent Sentinel. So a lot of these 2 and less costed walls are really the saving grace of this deck, because once you hit that 4 mana and you get that Sentinel into play, you have the opportunity to still make a play, still add to your wall count, and at the same time have 2 mana available to use the Sentinel. So next on the block, well, let's do this real quick. Pride Guardian, like I said, I was running into issues with life gain, and while this one does have to block in order to gain life, I still think it is a fabulous choice. It comes in at 1, it's a 0/3. You can't go wrong with that. Only running 2 though, again, because the fact that it has to block to gain life is not... It makes it a little underpowered for this, so I definitely would not go over 2. This one next, the Prison Barricade is kind of the trick, the key here, and this works around the text. Now, Vent Sentinel says it deals damage to target player equal to the number of creatures with Defender that you control. Now, Prison Barricade, you can pay the kicker cost, and it doesn't lose Defender, but what it gains is the ability to attack as though it did not have Defender. So what this means, and hopefully I'm explaining this clearly enough, is that a kicked Prison Barricade, first off, gets the +1/+1 counter, so it is a 2/4, but at the same time it can attack. It can attack like a creature without Defender, but it still has the Defender ability. So it is still counting towards your Vent Sentinel damage, but at the same time it can attack as though it didn't have it. And that's something to keep in mind if you're going to make changes to this deck and you want to look for other options. Definitely keep in mind that there are other walls out there like this that have an ability to not lose Defender, but to attack as though they didn't have it. So it means that it can attack like a regular creature, but it still has Defender. So, definitely something to keep in mind. This is kind of not a trick, but it's definitely a very cool interaction between these two. There are, like I said, a lot of options out there in these colors for wall choices. The Flowstone wall is a nice option as well. Most of them are, you see here, Cat Monk, it is not a wall, and you get the Shield Bearers, not a wall. There were a couple of those in the recent sets, kind of around Zendikar, where they were playing around with this Defender being important mechanic that you can look for, but there were also a lot of the older ones that have stuff like this, like the Barricade, that they can attack. So, if you want to make changes, definitely I encourage you to go look at the selection of walls available. There's a lot of stuff. There's even a couple that we can find in artifacts, like the Tanglecord, and those work really well because they don't need a specific color, and when running 3-color deck, that's always definitely important. But so I hope you enjoyed this. Definitely go check out the example game so you can see how this deck works. Give it a run. It's a lot of fun, and it's definitely a lazy man's dream.